am very impressed and honored to be in Chile. It's my first time in Chile. I've been many times to Brazil, and my colleague at the Boston Consulting Group, Jorge Becerra, told me many years ago about the importance of ICARE. And when I hear the themes you are dealing with, listening to these presentations and the companies here, you didn't exaggerate, Jorge. So thank you for helping me being with you this morning to talk about productivity. But at the Boston Consulting Group, I am leading the Institute for Organization, where we study the trends that could be useful for our clients to anticipate. And some years ago, we started to study what has happened to productivity over the last 55 years. And to be frank, I was very surprised by what I learned. If you look at the 15 largest economies in Europe, productivity used to grow 5% per annum in the 50s, in the 60s, in the early 70s. 5. From 73 to 83, 3% per annum. From 83 to 95, 2% per annum. And since 1995, 1% per annum at best. If you look at Germany, one of the most dynamic European economies, productivity has been growing by less than 0.8% per annum since 1992. So, what is happening? Where is all the potential embedded in technological innovations disappearing? You know, not to mention computers, IT, communication, telecommunication, the internet. We should expect productivity to grow much faster than in the past. Instead, it grows much more slowly than in the past. Why? What is happening? At the Boston Consulting Group, we asked a team of consultants to make a root cause analysis to try to understand where is productivity disappearing. But there is another trend that we also noticed in the Institute for Organization. It is what is called the work crisis. How do people feel at work? Answer is less and less well. In the US, satisfaction at work. In 1987, 61% of the US workers were happy at work. In the morning, they were happy to go to work. In the evening, they were looking forward to tomorrow to come back to work. That was in 1987. In 2005, 55% were happy at work. In 2007, 50%. In 2009, 45%. In 2011, less than 43% are happy at work. In Europe, depending on sectors and countries, only 11 to 23% of the workforce is engaged. And the issue is so serious that polling institutes like Gallup have invented a new category of attitude to account for the way people feel at work, what they call active disengagement. So active disengagement are the people not only they are not engaged, but they are actively disengaging their colleagues. And if they are managers, actively disengaging their teams. Active disengagement is acting against the interest of our company. 20% of active disengagement in the US, 21% in Australia, 20% in Germany, 23% in Japan, 24% in Great Britain, 24% in France of active disengagement. So 1 out of 4 French workers is acting against the interest of his or her company. And this is only an average. In some companies it is less, but in others it is more. Imagine that in companies maintaining nuclear plants, active disengagement is 45%. And all this despite all the leadership development programs to train managers on how to better motivate their teams, better affiliate their teams, better lead their teams, despite all the people initiatives, the team bonding events, the team building sessions during the weekend usually. What is happening in the workplace? We asked another BCG team, to make a root cause analysis to try to understand what is happening in the workplace. Why so much disengagement? Why so much dissatisfaction, frustration, suffering at work? Now, when people are not engaged, when they act against the interest of their company, what happens? We try to change the organization. We try to change behaviors. And this is when the problem starts. Basically, as you may know, 80% of change efforts fail. And this proportion has remained constant since 1991. What happens when companies try to change behaviors, what people do? Usually, they use a traditional approach that we have summarized on that slide. If you want to change behaviors, we have to change people's mindset. You must re-engage. You try to change people's values. Customer first, accountability, agility, innovation. We try to change people's feelings, mentalities, mindset, values, feelings, hoping that this will change their behavior and eventually the situation. But this is totally wrong. This approach does not work for two reasons. Reason number one, it is impossible to directly change people's mindset, values, feelings. We can put posters, we can give leaflets to people, we can ask people to learn leaflets by heart. It doesn't work. Why? Because telepathy does not work. There is no way to directly change people's values, accountability, customer centricity, agility, innovation, social responsibility. It doesn't work. Second, it is counterproductive to try. Because if I try to change your values, I go to you. Okay, let's put things in the right order. First, you have the wrong values. Second, I have the right values. Third, I know what values you should have. And fourth, I am going to change your values. What do? You try to protect your values. By definition of values, you believe in them. So you protect. You resist. You get opposition. You get conflict. Resistance. Failure. In fact, this approach is totally wrong. Because in reality, behaviors depend on what you could call the context. If people do what they do, it is because it is the best solution they find in their context, in their situation. Otherwise, they would do something else. So if you want to change behaviors, you need to understand people's situation, their context, and then change this context. And people will behave differently. And when we behave differently, 15 hours a day, eventually our values, our mindset, our feelings will adjust. As a consequence, not as a driver. This was worth a Nobel Prize, as you may know, to Herbert Simon in 1978. But we ignore and we try to keep changing people's values directly, creating frustration, disengagement, resistance. Now, I can tell you something. What your people do at work, their behaviors, their actions, their decisions, their interactions are 100% aligned with the context that we have created, but that we fail to perceive, that we fail to understand, and that therefore we cannot change. What is the context we have created for our workers? Basically, we have created a context based on the best practices of management. How should we organize? What structure, process, system should we have? It depends on our strategy, our key success factors. Michael Porter. From strategy to structure. This worked well when the world was simple. In the good old days of Professor Porter, who told us there are two kinds of strategies, there are two kinds of success factors. You may remember cost leadership. You compete on cost. This is strategy number one. Well, if you compete on cost, that works very well. I want structure that minimize cost, that maximize economies of scale. And I will go for a functional structure. Now, if I compete on the second key success factor, the second generic strategy of Michael Porter, not cost, but differentiation. If I differentiate on a geographic basis, I will have geographic structure with geographic processes, etc. It worked very well. But the problem started already in the mid-80s when most companies lost the ability to choose between cost and differentiation, quality, uniqueness. If this afternoon, after the ICARE conference has stopped, we go to a car dealer in Santiago, a car dealer. Show me your cars. And suppose the car dealer tells you, look, before I show you my cars, I have to tell you that we have a cost strategy. I don't care about your strategy, show me your cars. No, it's very important to remember that we have a cost strategy because our cars are quite affordable, but not really reliable. So if I were you, I would buy 2 of them to always have a backup. Does it work? No. So what did we do? We invented the matrix organization to have the benefits of a functional structure that minimize cost and the benefits of a geographic or product or customer structure that ensures differentiation, quality. Life became already a bit more complicated. But this was nothing compared to the nightmare of the last 10 years, because over the last 10 years, there were more and more success factors, more and more requirements. And we kept applying the same approach. Every time there was a new requirement, quality, compliance, speed, reliability, innovation, efficiency, global consistency, local responsiveness, we kept adding new structure, new processes, new systems, new scorecards, new incentives, new KPIs, new committees, new clusters, new regions, new headquarters, new functions, new interfaces. If you think about it, what has happened? On the left, you have the new complexity of business. On the right, you have self-inflicted complicatedness. The real issue is not on the left, because on the left we have no choice. We have to deal with this complexity. We cannot tell customers, look, now you have to be reasonable. Do you want cost or quality? We have to satisfy all these requirements. We have to manage complexity. We have to accept this complexity. The problem is on the right, because in these complicated organizations, managers spend 40% of their time writing reports, because they have to report on so many KPIs, metrics. They spend 30% of their time in meetings, because they have to coordinate with so many other functions. So at best, they have 30% of their time left to be with their teams. So therefore, the teams are poorly managed. They don't work on the right targets, priorities, activities, without the right guidance, guidelines, coaching, recognition. Therefore, the teams have to do, undo, and redo. Based on BCG analysis, teams in the most complicated quintile spend between 60 and 80% of their time wasting their time, but working harder and harder and longer. This is the root cause of the productivity crisis and of the work crisis. This complicated organization, based on best practices that used to work when the world was simple, is killing productivity and engagement at work. People lose purpose, they lose direction. And when you lose purpose, when you lose direction, when there are more and more obstacles, what is the rational behavior in this context? In this context that we have created, what is the rational behavior in front of more and more obstacles? It is to disengage. It is to become actively disengaged. So, lack of engagement, frustration, disengagement is not a generational issue. Oh, you see, the young people are not the same as the old people. Yes, I know. It is not a psychological disease, a sign of weakness. What would be a sign of psychological weakness would be to remain engaged in these organizations. If people disengage, it is because it is the rational behavior, the winning solution in this labyrinth. So, one automotive company recently, let's take the engineering division, just engineering division of an automotive company. It is a engineering people who design cars. It is a 5-dimensional matrix. People are organized by model, by segment, geography, technology, manufacturing site. If you open any cell of the matrix, you find another 20-dimensional matrix. Because every time there is a new key success factor, they create a new structure to coordinate the engineers along the new key success factor. So there is Mr. Cost, Mr. Petrol Consumption, Mr. Safety, Mr. Noise, Mr. Compactness, Mr. Aerodynamics, Mr. Anti-corrosion Properties. And some years ago, a new key success factor emerged on the marketplace, the length of the warranty period. Kia, the South Korean manufacturer, offers 7 years. This company, 1 to 2. It's not enough. We need to enlarge the warranty period. Therefore, we have to make cars easy to repair. Because otherwise, if when you bring the car to the garage to fix the lights, you have to remove the engine to access the lights, the car will stay 5 days at the garage instead of 2 hours, and the warranty budget will explode. So what was the solution? The new key success factor is repairability. I need somebody accountable. So they created a new function, Mr. Repairability, who created a repairability process with a repairability scorecard, with repairability metrics, with repairability incentives to motivate the engineers to make cars easier to repair. That came on top of 25 other KPIs. 17% of variable compensation, which is a lot for design engineers, 17%, divided by 26 KPIs. Repairability makes a 0.6% difference in these people's total compensation. What was the impact on their behavior? 0. The cars they were making were still very difficult to repair. They were not able to enlarge the warranty period, but what a cost to achieve 0 impact. Mr. Repairability, process, scorecard, metrics, incentive, evaluation, coordination with the 25 other coordinators to have 0 impact. This is complicatedness. Now, what does it take to deal with the new complexity of business? What does it take to deal with the new complexity of business? It takes to better use the intelligence of our people. The only way to deal with complexity is intelligence. In other words, it is not a matter of skeleton, org chart, structure, bones. It is a matter of nervous system. What is the nervous system of a company? It consists of 3 elements. The nervous system, the interplay, the interactions, the synapses, the linkages. First linkage, vertical, leadership, the value added by managers. A horizontal one, cooperation, the value that each one adds to the others. Eventually, engagement, the value that people add when they execute. Are we thinking about the values that our managers are adding? Usually this is not what we expect managers to do. We expect managers to manage. Yes, but what does it mean to manage? To manage, why do we need managers? We need managers to make people do what people would not spontaneously do. The primary role of management is to make people do what people would not spontaneously. Because if people spontaneously do what they need to do, we don't need managers. So ask yourself, my managers, what are they supposed to make their teams do that the teams would not spontaneously do? Second, my managers, are they able to play that role? Do they have the skills? Do they have the information? Do they have the power? And when you answer these two questions, your managers will add more value. And it will show in the productivity of their teams that will work on the right targets, the right priorities, with the right guidance, the right guidelines, the right coaching, the right recognition. Cooperation. The value that procurement adds to manufacturing, that marketing adds to sales, that research adds to development. Very often in companies, when we try to improve cooperation, we make a big mistake. You know, in banks, when you have a problem between the back office and the front office, what do? They create a middle office. What happens 1 year later? Instead of one problem between the back and the front offices, now I have two problems. Between the back and the middle, and between the middle and the front. Plus I have to pay for the middle office. Why? Because we have just added an interface, a bone in the skeleton, as opposed to developing the nervous system, the face-to-face interaction between back and front offices. Third, engagement. Engagement, I like the quote that you put earlier. Productive work is the one that comes from a man happy at work. Fantastic. You know, we think sometimes that if we have complete processes, accurately defined, exhaustive processes, and that people scrupulously execute, they will create value. It is totally wrong. If people are not engaged, even if they scrupulously execute a perfectly defined process, no value will be created. You know air traffic controllers, how they go on strike? Air traffic controllers. In fact, they don't have the right to go on strike. But sometimes they want to stop work to negotiate better way of life, better wages, better working standards, better working environment. So you know how they do? What they do to go on strike? They apply 100% of the rules. They scrupulously apply 100% of the rules. And when they apply 100% of the rules, no plane can take off. Because for planes to take off, they need to interpret the rules. And there is no rule about how to interpret the rules. People have to use their intelligence, their judgment, to take into account the situation, to go for the spirit of the rule, not just the letter of the rule. Because when they go and for that, they need to be engaged. When they are not engaged, they will scrupulously tick 100% of the boxes and no plane will take off. Now, the most important of these three interactions is cooperation. Because leaders, whatever their individual qualities, if they don't cooperate, they add less value. Let's take an example, because I would like just to highlight something about the importance of cooperation, but some of the obstacles. Let's take a collective sport, not football, but relay race. Let's take final Worldwide Championship, women, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Jamaica, Belgium, Germany, France, US. The fastest team is the US. Notably, if you compare them to an average team, the French team, based on their personal record, on their best performance, the US team arrives 3.2 meters ahead of the French team. These people are so fast that they also compete in the 100-meter race, so we know their individual productivity. And when the final takes place, the year the final takes place, the US team is in great shape. Based on their best performance this year, the US team arrives 6.4 meters ahead of the 6.4 meters is huge in front of the French team. Let's look at the race. You will see that the US team is ahead. Tori Edwards is ahead. Tori Edwards. She's the second fastest woman on Earth. And who is the fastest woman on Earth? Christy Gaines. So in the US team, they have the two fastest women on Earth. And the two others are not bad either. And we will see that behind the US team, the French team is trying to catch up. So let's look at the race.
Angela Williams, Christy Gaines, Inger Miller et Tori Edwards, les Belges au couloir numéro 1, les Biélorusses au 2, les États-Unis donc au 3, les Russes au 4 avec Fyodorova, Tabakova, Kislova et Kruglova, l'Ukraine au 5, la France au 6, la Jamaïque au 7 et l'Allemagne à l'extérieur.
Ouais, les passages vont être déterminants. Christine, on nous avait paru totalement retrouvée en demi-finale. Elle est très très vite. C'est uniquement une question de passage, Patrick.
Ouais. Voilà, c'est parti, Patricia Girard.
French team.
Patricia qui va aller chercher Muriel Urtis. Elle est partie comme une folle, Patricia. Allez, allez, attention, voilà, c'est assuré, c'est passé. Muriel Urtis dans la ligne opposée contre les États-Unis avec Kirsty Gaines. Muriel dans la ligne opposée qui fait l'effort, qui revient. Allez, c'est super, Muriel, faut passer à Sylviane. Oui, ça passe. Sylviane aussi. Allez, Sylviane dans le relais. Sylviane dans le virage. Sylviane Urtis, Sylviane Félix qui se bat. Qui va chercher Christine. Allez, Christine. Allez, Christine Arnaud. Allez, 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 Christine Arnaud. Contre les États-Unis, ça va être juste. Allez, allez, Christine, allez, allez, allez. Ça va passer. Elle est championne du monde. Championne du monde. 41-78. Record pulvérisé. Les Françaises sont...
So, when you hear this sentence, thanks to cooperation, the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts. This is not philosophy. This is not poetry. This is math. Those who carry the baton are slower, but their baton is faster. Miracle of cooperation. Because cooperation multiplies intelligence and energy at work. And look at the Jamaican runner. Not only is she disengaged, not only is she exhausted, not only have they lost the race, but she has hurt herself. She's holding her leg. Why? Because basically, whenever we don't cooperate as much as we can, we need more of everything. We need more effort, including exhausting people at work. We need more time. Like the US team, they arrived just too late. We need more talents. We waste talents. We give you the two fastest women on earth and you lose. War for talents. You have the best talents on earth and you are not able to win. Whenever we don't cooperate, we need more time. We need more resources, more equipment, more system, more inventories, more stock, more working capital, more teams. We have to pay for the middle office, for Mr. Reparability. Who will bear that cost? Not shareholders, not customers, employees. who have to compensate through their super individual effort, like the Jamaican runner, for the lack of cooperation. This is why there is so much disengagement, frustration, suffering at work, because we are not able to foster cooperation. We create the middle office instead, complicatedness, reporting, meetings. Cooperation is not about meetings. Meetings are the opposite of cooperation. The less we cooperate, the more meetings we need. Because we use meetings to protect, as opposed to share, open, be transparent, build together. I worked with a fourth French runner, Christine Aron, because according to the journalist, she's the one that saved the French team. And she told me, you know, no, it is the third runner that make me win. The third. But you know, the way she passed me the baton was terrific. She woke me up because she shouted at me. But you see, the blood that she put in her arm to pass me the baton, that she put in her throat to shout at me, was not in her legs. So it came at the expense of her own measurable speed. And if we had used metrics, KPIs, to assess the runners, the third runner would have put all her blood in her legs. But then there would have been no blood in her arm, in her throat, and the baton would have fallen or been slowed down. So how do we manage cooperation? Let me show you the relay race in slow motion, because I want you to realize that the biggest obstacle to cooperation is measurement. What gets measured gets done, yes, but cooperation cannot be measured. So the more we use measurement, the more it is at the expense of cooperation. Look at the relay race and concentrate on the third runner.
Muriel, après votre 4e place sur le 200, vous aviez soif de revanche. Quelle plus belle revanche que ce soir.
Oui, c'est vrai que après ma petite déception de jeudi soir, j'avais vraiment envie de bien faire pour le relais. On savait qu'on en était capable et on a tout donné pour cette finale.
Patrick, je ne sais pas si vous souhaitez intervenir parce que je sais que vous êtes tellement heureux.
Embrassez-les pour moi, Nelson, embrassez-les pour moi.
Voilà qui est fait.
You don't put the light, it doesn't. Look at the mouth of the third French runner. Can you see her mouth? This is cooperation. Now, let's make a root cause analysis. Remember the fourth Jamaican runner, exhausted, she has hurt herself. Let's make a root cause analysis. Let's look at the third runner when she passes the baton. Look at the mouth of this runner. Is it the same? No. This is real cooperation. This is compliance. You know? Hep, this is the baton, good luck.
Vénard.
Patrick, et place au tour d'honneur. Merci mille fois, mesdemoiselles.
Super, regardez Christine comme à Budapest, comme à ses plus grands jours. Christine Aron, littéralement ressuscitée, qui vient déposer Tori Edwards, pourtant vice-championne du monde du 100 mètres. Et je crois que, je ne sais plus qui est-ce qui a dit ça, mais c'est vrai, c'est une victoire 100% Antilles. Il est 14h là-bas, je crois, 14h10 ou je sais pas, mais bon, je pense à vous, vraiment, c'est super. Je pense à tous ceux que j'ai rencontrés quand je suis allé aux Antilles. Et sans les Antilles, Bernard, et il n'y a pas d'athlétisme, ou très peu d'athlétisme.
Ça, c'est clair.
Donc une Martiniquaise, Sylviane.
Look at her. Look at where she puts her blood. Not all in her legs, also in her arm, in her throat, in her eyes, in her brain to pass the baton. Now, this energy that is in this arm, in that throat, will make a super difference in these legs. And when these legs go very fast, is it because she made a super effort or because of the third runner gave her the baton so effectively? There is no metric, no measurement. I can measure the total speed of the baton, I can measure the individual speed, and I should do that. But the most important, the contribution of each one, of procurement to manufacturing, of R&D to manufacturing, of marketing to sales, of IT to operations, of human resource management to business lines cannot be measured. So this is why the most important is, I would say, to do what? How can you reward performance when cooperation cannot be measured? To answer this question, we propose 6 simple rules. The first one is to really understand what people do. What do they do? Do we really know what people do when they pass the baton from each other? Otherwise, we're not able to recognize what they do. Second, you need to reinforce managers as integrators. Integrators are not middle offices. They are not Mr. Reparability. They are your managers that you reinforce so that they have power and interest to make others cooperate. There are many ways to do that. Remember to remove rules, because then when there are too many rules, managers cannot add value, because they are too constrained. Remove layers, otherwise they are too far from the actions. Empower as many people as possible. Give them cards so that they can play the cooperative game. Otherwise they will withdraw, they will disengage. Create a shadow of the future by creating feedback loops that expose people to the consequences of their actions. This is what the automotive company did. They said to the design engineers, now in 3 years, when the new car is launched on the market, you will move to the after-sales network. This changed everything. Because if the warranty budget explodes, it will explode in my face. Much more powerful than 0.6% variable compensation, with just a simple change in the career path. In the career trajectories, you are able to make cars easier to repair and eliminate all the cost and complicatedness of Mr. Reparability, process, scorecard, metrics, incentives. More value at less cost. Increase reciprocity by giving to people rich objectives. You know, in the relay race, runners have rich objectives. Number 1, win the race, collective objective. Number 2, individual. Train as much as possible to run as fast as possible. Objective 3, pass the baton in the most effective way to the next runner. I know that if you do that, it may be at the expense of your own speed, to make a super difference in the speed of the next runner. But I'm not stupid. I know that. I will be in front. I will know. I will be able to recognize because I know what you do. Reward those who cooperate and make those who don't cooperate bear the cost. We are working with the CEO of Lego. The way he uses this rule is terrific. He says blame is not for failure, it is for failing to help or ask for help. It changes everything. Suddenly it becomes in my interest to be transparent on my real weakness, on my real forecast, because I know I will not be blamed if I fail, but if I fail to help or ask for help. We are working with the French Railway, 165,000 employees, civil servants, because it is a state-owned company. 94% punctuality is the target. For the last 8 years, 80% at best. 20% of their trains are late. How do they manage punctuality? In every station, you have 6 units. Each of them has a 99% punctuality target. And every time a train is late, they go through a scientific investigation to know who is guilty. Is it maintenance? The train drivers? The ticket inspectors who closed the door too late? And when they have found who is guilty, the number 2 of the company directly calls the poor supervisor of the unit to shout at him, "You have delayed the train. Forget your promotion, your evaluation. It's finished." It's a nightmare. So every time a train is late, people say, "No, it's not me, it's because of them, because of maintenance, because of the train drivers." They spend 4,000 hours per year per station in this scientific investigation to know who is guilty, because nobody says, "It's me who delayed the train." these people don't cooperate, because it would be possible, you know, to improve timeliness, forget about all these unrealistic targets. You can have delays, even 5 minutes delay maintenance, as long as you cooperate. You tell the station, you inform the station, you communicate the station that you will send the train with a 5 minutes delay. Then the station could also cooperate. They could anticipate, pre-position passengers, and the train will take 10 minutes for boarding, not 15, and you have absorbed the 5 minutes of initial delay. But nobody cooperates. Why? Traditional approach. Because they have the wrong mindset. They are bureaucrats. They were born with the bureaucratic gene. That's why they don't cooperate. No, if they don't cooperate, it's because in their context, not cooperating is the right solution. You know what is their real goal? Not to put the train on time, but never be found guilty of a delay. Big difference. The resources are the other units, because they could create a bigger delay and take the blame. The constraint, the scientific investigation. Now we understand why these people don't cooperate. Not because they are stupid, but because they are intelligent. If maintenance calls the station to say, I have a 5 minutes delay, then you don't need 4,000 hours to know who is guilty. But issue maintenance, you said it, you will take the blame. So maintenance, don't say anything. You have understood why people do what they do. So then, this is rule number one, why people do what they do. Not because they are stupid, but because they align with the context we have created. And when the number two of the company saw that, he said it's because of me. And they changed the context by using the simple rules, notably the last one, reward those who cooperate. And he said, you know, the rule that we use so far is when one unit delays the others, it takes the blame, because it was the root cause. But when you are the root cause for a delay, you have not done it on purpose. Nobody says, this morning I will have an unexpected problem and delay a train. But when the others don't anticipate, don't compensate, don't relay, don't cooperate, they have decided not to cooperate. So he said, we are going to change the rule. In the past, the rule was when one unit delays the others, it takes the blame. Tomorrow, the new rule is when one unit delays the others, they take the blame. They made pilots 600 trains per week, and this is what happened after 4 months. They had jumped from 80% timeliness to 95% timeliness. And the unions were surprised by the results. They made an independent audit. How are the people feeling? And the people were feeling better because you had removed the root cause that kills productivity and satisfaction at work. You are able to simultaneously improve productivity and satisfaction at work by removing this root cause. And then you have a virtuous circle. The more engaged people are, the more productive they are, and the more productive they are, the more you can satisfy their aspirations, their ambitions. This is smart simplicity. Now they are rolling out this approach across the whole company. They have already achieved 89%. Punctuality used to be their main weakness. It has become their biggest strength. Their new advertising campaign is based on punctuality. It may be surprising, but 89% of our trains are on time. The most important part of this ad is not the young couple in the middle, but the parents in the background who unexpectedly arrive on time. This is what cooperation does. It multiplies intelligence, simultaneously improving performance and satisfaction at work. Thank you.